how did Peter sink? We know why he sank. Jesus tells us exactly that it was his lack of faith and his doubt. That's why he sank. But how did he sink? Well, let's back up to the whole bigger context. So Peter has, with the other apostles, has just been at the feeding of the 5,000, and he's witnessed this great, awesome thing, which is certainly very exciting and very, awe-inspiring, and they were just pumped up for the Lord. And Jesus sends him in the boat across the sea. He says, you guys go over there. I'm going to go pray for a bit. I'll meet you across the sea, I guess he probably told them. And so they're going across, and they're struggling against the storm. So it's probably a low point. There's a different kind of excitement there, terror kind of excitement. Jesus comes walking across, thinking it's a ghost, and that's more terror. But then they realize, oh, it is the Lord, because he says, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. So all of a sudden their spirits are back up high again, like after the feeding of the 5,000. So in that spirit, Peter boldly says to the Lord, Lord, if it is you, command me to walk upon the water. And Jesus says, come, get out of the boat, come towards me. And Peter does, and begins to walk on the water. And then he sees the wind and the storm, and he begins to sink. And as he's going down, fortunately, gracefully, happily, he calls out, Lord, save me. And Jesus, of course, lifts him up and brings him back into the boat. What I want to focus on, though, when I ask, how does Peter sink? Notice it says that he begins to sink. Not that he just suddenly dropped beneath the waves, right? Imagine if we had you on a rope, a rope swing or whatever, above the surface of a lake, your feet are just above the water, and we cut the rope. You're not going to begin to sink. You're going to fall right through the surface of the water, and your head's going to be underwater immediately. That's not what we get in the gospel. It seems to be saying that Peter begins to go down like a boat taking on water, maybe slowly at first, and then maybe quicker as it gets towards the end. Right? He begins, it's a process of sinking before he calls out to Jesus to save him. What is that process? What's happening there, right? He is overwhelmed by the situation. He, in the drama and the stress of what's going on, he takes his eyes off of Jesus, and that begins the process of him sinking. He loses his focus of faith. That's what begins the process of him sinking. It's important to point this out, I think, because it happens to so many people, to ourselves and to others. Right? We can all think of somebody who used to be Catholic, who used to be in the church, who now effectively lives like an atheist, right? Who's not a member of our parish anymore, effectively. They've sunk beneath the waves away from the church. But how did that happen? It probably, almost definitely was not a sudden overnight change. It wasn't they were all here and all invested and they were gone tomorrow. Almost never is it like that. But they begin to sink. They begin to draw away from church life. They stop coming to youth group or stop coming to parish council or Bible study or whatever. And then maybe one Sunday they go, I'm not going to go to Mass this morning. I'll go next week. And then next week comes to say the same thing. And then it's been a month, and it's been 3 months, and then a year, and then 6 years. And then effectively they're lost beneath the waves. How does that happen? How does someone get to that point? Someone who was doing well in faith seems to drop away. I presume nobody wants that to happen to themselves, yet it does happen. How? We lose focus on the Lord. Now, on the one hand, it's worth saying, as a side note, really, but it's worth saying, as a community, we have something to do here. We have an obligation. We have a responsibility here. If we see someone, if we recognize that someone is struggling, or hasn't been there in a few weeks, or is sick, or has some big life change, or has some sorrow or tragedy happen to them, we got to reach out to them. You got to check on people. Hey, how you doing? Can I pray for you? What's going on? How can I help? That's so important. Because imagine, if you are sick at home and you haven't been to church in a while, and no one notices you're gone, no one checks on you. What does that say? It's not important that I'm there. No one's going to miss me if I'm gone. Which some of you you're going to come back no matter what. But some people, if no one cares if I'm here or not, why even go? Right? So as a community, we have a responsibility to check in on those who are struggling, who are suffering, who, for who knows what reason, aren't around anymore or seem to be drifting away. We need to check on them. But for the others, from the other side of it, rather, we have a personal responsibility too. It's not just to wait for somebody else to take care of me. I have my own part to play, right? And what happens so often, people who drift away, who sink beneath the waves, if you will, who begin to sink and don't stop, is that they didn't have an interior prayer life. There wasn't anything to hold on to beyond just Mass on Sunday. Now, I don't say, quote, just Mass on Sunday as if it were nothing. Mass on Sunday is the most important thing, but it's not the only thing. Notice how in the Gospel Jesus he feeds the 5,000, including the apostles, and then he sends them he sends them out away from the awesome thing. So, Mass is like feeding the 5,000, and so we come to Mass, that's great, and then we get sent out into the world for the rest of the week to go put into practice the graces we received at Mass. So he sends them out from the feeding of the 5,000 to practice trusting in him, to use what they've just gained. That means we have to have some sustenance in between those times, right? We have to have a relationship with the Lord not just on Sundays, but throughout the week. And that's what so often doesn't happen. If you talk to people who have fallen away from the faith, I get to sometimes have this conversation, almost always, it's because, all they had was Sunday Mass, which is, of course, so important. But if all they had was just that and didn't pray or do anything else the rest of the week, then when something does happen that breaks that takes them away from it, that makes them, change their perspective, then it's so easy to begin sinking when they have nothing else to hold on to. So my strong encouragement, my challenge for everyone is to make sure you have a daily prayer routine. Make sure that you have some way to carry forward what you gain at Mass every Sunday into the rest of the week. Make sure you gotta have something. You have to have some kind of more than just, say grace before meals. That's not nothing, but that's not nearly enough, right? Something like praying a rosary or reading scripture or doing some journaling or something like that. Some tangible, concrete, specific way to pray. But it doesn't have to be big and complicated. It doesn't have to be a huge, big to-do. Right? Look at the first reading with Prophet Elijah. He's hiding in a cave on a mountain for reasons that aren't really relevant for this case, but there's an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. There's wind crushing rocks on the mountain, but God was not in the wind. There's a still small voice, the tiny whispering sound. That's where he encounters the Lord. So our prayer doesn't need to be big and dramatic and crushing rocks. If it is, great, that's fine. But it's just a still small voice, a gentle conversation. That's usually where we meet the Lord. Have faith that you can just do a little bit. Just start small, and that's fine. Because we need that regular connection, something throughout the day to get ourselves back in touch with the Lord, to make sure we remember why things are and who things are for, to keep that connection going. That way, if we do begin to sink, we have a close recourse to call it to the Lord. He's right there. We haven't gone far from him. We can say, Lord, save me, quickly and easily, because he's right there. We've not gone far away from him, because we're all going to begin to sink from time to time. That's going to happen. That's how life is. But if we are resolved to keep up a discipline of prayer throughout the week, and again, it can vary widely depending on who you are and what your life is like, but if we keep that connection to the Lord, which I so strongly beg and encourage and plead that you to do, we are such less risk of that beginning to sink, of drifting away from the Lord, of falling beneath the waves. Families especially, I really encourage you to make some dedicated, planned family prayer time. Pray together. It will be the best time of your day, I promise. Your kids will actually love it. They'll look forward to it. And it'll be so good for your family. Because it, again, keeps you from getting too far into the sinking. It helps you recognize when things are going wrong, helps you give thanks when things are going well, and keep that connection with the Lord. But we often don't know what to do in prayer. So even if I make just that time to listen to God's still small voice, well, what do I do? How do I don't know. Yes, there's some, pray the Our Father, Hail Mary, Decade of the Rosary, read the Bible, sure. But what else is there to do? Because it can't just be that. What do I do if I just am in silence with God? If I'm going to journal or I'm going to rest and just be quiet with him, what do I do? How do I navigate that? Be not afraid. Look back at the gospel. Jesus sent the apostles out across the sea. So you might ask in your prayer, all right, Lord, where are you sending me? What do I need to be going and doing? That can be a good question that can lead into good prayer. Or you might ask, Lord, call me out on the water. Call me out of the boat. Call me out of my comfort zone and see what he says to that. He might say, "Ah, yes, here's what your comfort zone is, and how you need to step outside of it." Or you might look at what he says when he gets back in the boat. He gives them courage and peace. It's okay, Lord. Tell the Lord, I need courage in this. Lord, here's where I need your comfort and your consolation. The theme of all things I want to get around to is asking the Lord and being concrete and specific with him of what we need and how things are in life, right? Often we forget to tell God, to admit to God, to be humble to God, to be honest with God, where we really are and what's really going on. And if we don't know ourselves, if we can't say those things, if we can't talk to God honestly, then it's so easy to drift away from it. It's so easy to sink beneath the waves, to begin to go under the water. So let us remember to take what we gained from Sunday Mass, from experiencing the miracle of feeding the 5,000, which is what Mass is in a way, and Jesus sends us out into the world, but we got to maintain a relationship with him. We got to maintain our connection throughout the week, which means we need a daily habit of prayer. It doesn't have to be big and dramatic. It needs to be simple but effective for us, asking good questions, being in a relationship with the Lord, being humble enough to name where we are and ask God for what we need, and trust that when we do so, even if we are sinking, he will grab us and pull us up and bring us back into the boat and give us courage and comfort and take away our fears. Because he wants us, with his grace, to trust in him and to be able to walk upon the water. Even if it's scary, if we don't know where we're going with that, if you don't know what he's got in plan for us, if we stay connected with him, he will lead us, he will call us, he will guide us, and take us across the water with him.